Thank you, Calvin. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Lee. I'm an alcoholic. And what a kind introduction that was. Thank you so much. It is, it's good to be back with you guys. I think it's probably, Ollie, tell me, but it's been probably 6 months since I've been on here with you guys. And so it does kind of feel like old home week. I've got a lot of great friends that I already see on here and folks that I got to see during Ralph and I did a series together and coming on this meeting a few times. So anyway, great to see everyone. I am thrilled to be here, but I have to tell you, I'm also filled with apprehension. And I'm gonna, because one of the things that I know we are called to do is just share the truth about ourselves. And so I'm going to do that tonight. And I will tell you that when Ollie reached out to me, I don't know, it's been at least a couple of months ago to invite me on here. I was excited to come and to step 11. I said, great. I look forward to having that conversation with you folks again and sharing, my perspective and my 11-step practice and all of those things. And then, of course, I put it out in my mind. And I got a text from Ali on Friday, I think, Friday or Saturday, that reminded me, said, hey, look forward to seeing you Tuesday night. And I thought, oh, man, I'm in serious trouble. And he said, you need to choose a topic and a title, if you will, for the discussion. And I texted back to him pretty quickly that we alcoholics are undisciplined. And I will tell you why I chose that. Because I am undisciplined. Because my discipline has been sorely lacking. I mean, I get that text on Friday, and I think I've got 4 days to really get this 11-step thing back in action, right? I got 4 days to, can you catch up? Can you catch up, pray? I mean, if you do some extra credit work, does that count for step 11? And sort of like 90 meetings in 90 days, can I go to 5 of them in a day and count that? So I've been praying my ass off since Friday, just trying to catch up for you guys. And but I want to tell you that that's the truth, right? And so I want to start at the back of the chapter and then hit the reset button and talk a little bit and share a little history, but also always think that we want to be current with where am I with this step today? Where am I with any of these spiritual practices today? Because I can share informationally, and I will, because I need to kill some time. But I also want to share experientially. And so when the book says that we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Now, it's interesting to me because when it says the simple way we have just outlined, that might be the couple of pages that we always reference, 86, 87, 88. Or it could be everything I've read in the book up to that point. And either one would work, and I don't have a stake in if it means one or the other, but I know that approach would be appropriate to either. And it says it works, it really does. That the things you have laid out for me, that Bill laid out for us in this writing, and that you guys have modeled for me over the years from your own experience and your own relationship to the steps, prove to me that it works. It really does. But one of the things it's saying here's what it says works, among other things. It says that I'm in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, and foolish decisions. I become more efficient. I don't tire so easily. I'm not burning up energy foolishly as I did when I tried to arrange life to suit myself. So, but I'm undisciplined. Why wouldn't I want some of that, right? Why wouldn't I want that package? And the truth is, I don't decide I don't want it. I want to read a description or definition of discipline, because see, there's a couple of ways that we can interpret discipline, and it can have the connotation of punishment, right? Of you will be punished if you step out of line. You will be punished if you don't follow these dictates. And I don't think I get punished. I do think that I get to live in the results of my own behavior. I don't think that there's any punishment there. I just reap what I sow. But there's another description or definition of discipline that I think fits for me. And it says, discipline is one of the most important personality traits in everyone's life. The role of discipline in our life is to set orderliness, efficiency, punctuality, organization, and a focus on our task. And what I will tell you is, in recent months, I would say really the last 2 months to 6 weeks prior to getting Ali's text, I have not been engaged in a daily discipline of prayer and meditation. At least I have not been engaged in the on awakening and when retiring at night aspect of that. And I don't know everyone on here, so I want to give you a little context. My sobriety date is June 30th of 1989. So I've been sober a little over 32 years. And in that 32 years, I have had various relationships to step 11. My practices have varied. How I engage in prayer and meditation has had various approaches, and sometimes I have been undisciplined. I want to share something out of the 12 and 12, and then I'll quit beating myself up in this public flogging. But it says that all of us, by the way, it says all of us without exception pass through times when we can pray only with the greatest exertion of will. We are seized with a rebellion so sickening that we simply won't pray. When these things happen, we should not think too ill of ourselves. We should simply resume prayer as soon as we can, doing what we know is good for us. So I resumed prayer immediately upon receiving Ali's text. And here's what I'll tell you that has been my experience a few different times over that 32 years when that lack of discipline. And I will tell you, unlike this reading where it says rebellion, when it talks about rebellion seizing us, I have no rebellion against prayer and meditation. I have no resistance to praying and meditating. What I have is a lack of discipline, a willingness. Some of you have heard me share the story before that over 15 years ago, I went and met with my friend Howard Polans that some of you know, and Howard's passed away a couple of 3 years now, and I told Howard I was struggling with meditation. And Howard said, well, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm really not doing anything now. And he just laughed and he said, then you're not struggling with meditation. You're not meditating. He said, your problem's not technique, it's commitment. Your problem's not a resistance. Your problem is a lack of discipline. And he said, are you willing to create a space and time where that struggle can happen? He says, I don't know whether it'll be a struggle or not, but he said, are you willing to set aside time to commit to this process and see what happens? And so I did. I embraced that. And for a number of years, I was disciplined. And that, again, that discipline, manifestation of that discipline showed up in a variety of different ways in the way I might pray and I might meditate. I have done a lot of silent meditation. I've done a lot of guided meditation. When my head gets kind of busy, I'll turn on an app and use that. What I started doing just the first of this year, before the lack of discipline kicked in, for the first time in 32 years, I began praying on my knees. In fact, I think that when I last spoke to this group about the 11th step, I was open about the fact that historically I had never been an on my knees prayer. And not as I don't have any strong anti-pray on your knees perspective. I just did not do that. And I began back in January, February to pray on my knees, and I found that it gave me, it was stimulating to me because it was kind of flexing a different set of spiritual muscles, if you will. I was feeling the experience. And I don't think, this is me personally, I don't think that God, as I understand him, cares much about what position I'm in. Other people may have other feelings about that, but I'm not hung up on that aspect of it. But I would tell you my willingness to get on my knees seemed to bring a different experience for a while. And so that was enlightening and invigorating and stimulating, if you will. And but let me back up a little bit and tell you that, the reading that Robert did, Robert, it's great to see you, that the reading that Robert did from Appendix 2 in the back of the book has been one of the most important to me over the years, because I showed up at Alcoholics Anonymous, a guy that did have that rebellion against prayer, a guy that would not pray. I would not get in the circle at the end of the meeting and hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. I tied that to some sense of not wanting to be a hypocrite because I was unsure about what I believed, and I wasn't just going to go along and get along because that's what folks were doing. And I look back and it looks kind of self-important, but I will tell you, I was being earnest at the time. And my friend Kenny's on here, and we shared the same sponsor for a long time. And that sponsor, Frank, I told Frank that I wasn't comfortable with the language, spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. And all of that discussion around those things made me uncomfortable. And he took me back to Appendix 2, and he said, Steve, you're getting hung up on language, and I want you to have an experience. I don't care what you call it. And he helped me find that language in Appendix 2 that was more accessible to me at the time. That I was willing to have a personality change before I was willing to have a spiritual experience. And he said, I don't care what you call it, I just want you to have it. And I was grateful that I'm free to apply. Our book says back in We Agnostics that I should set aside any prejudice I have about spiritual terms and decide what they mean to me. How cool is that? That I get to decide what words mean. I get to make stuff up in AA. I get to use language, and I get to decide what that language means to me and for me. Now, what I can't do is project that language onto anybody else, but I get to have my own experience with that, and that allowed me to move forward a little bit. When we move through these steps, and when I am approaching step 11, and we arrive here tonight kind of taking the assumption, I think, since we're talking about that 11th step, that we are current with the preceding 10. And so just take that a leap of faith with me tonight. And as we read in the book around that 10th step, when we get that caveat at the end of the 10th step promises, where it says, what I really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition. apparently that maintenance is about to begin in this ongoing process of steps 10, 11, and 12. And it says that every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. And when I go to this 11th step prayer, it is suggesting that I pray for the knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry that out. So I am looking in theory, if you will, and hopefully in practice more often than not, that prayer is about every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. So now I'm making that shift through prayer from my will to God's will. It says that we, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These thoughts must go with us constantly. The word constantly is used several times in this 10th, 11th step, right? It says that that we must not be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. So that the other differentiator, if you will, or that I want to call out that everyone on here knows is often when we're talking about steps 10 and 11, step 11, we do get focused on the bookending of our day, on awakening, and when retiring at night. And we're given some good direction there. But 98% of my day falls in between those two. 98% of my day is when it says, when going through our day, we may face indecision. When thinking about our day, when going through the day, I may get it says that if I get agitated or doubtful, that I'll pause. I was in a meeting Saturday or Sunday morning that I go to. And by the way, since Ali sent me that text on Friday, I went to a meeting Sunday morning and a meeting yesterday at lunchtime. Both of them were on the 11th step. In both places, I had to confess to rooms full of people that I had been, delinquent in my in my discipline. But I will tell you that I think nothing serves me better than when I tell you the truth about me, and nothing will put me back into action than doing that. So, but as typically happens when they say that we teach what we need to learn. Now, I'm not confused that I'm teaching anything here tonight. It is just pretty divinely intervened that God said, look, Steve ain't going to get this done on his own. Ali, bring him in front of a bunch of people and make him fess up and get it together. So so here I am. But this is, all through these years, I want to go through the day and when agitated or doubtful, pause. And I will tell you that while I have not been very disciplined lately on awakening or when retiring at night, I have been active throughout the day. I have regularly throughout my day. I'm pretty used to when I bump into something saying, hey, oh yeah, hey God, thy will, not mine, be done. I'm no longer running the show. When I am bumping into people, it is pretty clear that I'm usually the one that is that's the cause of that I have shifted from where we were in the third step when it says that being convinced that a life run on self-will can hardly be a success, that on such a basis, I'm going to be in collision with the world and its people, even though my motives are good. So when I'm not inviting God, when I'm not looking for God's will, when self-will rather than God's will seems to be driving the boat for me in a given day, even if my motives are good and even if my facts are right, I tend to be in collision with folks. So when that happens, as it does, I kind of step back and go, oh, God, maybe I'm flying solo. Let me invite you back into this day. Let me remind myself that thy will, not mine, be done. This, when I when I left and had met with Howard that over 15 years ago now, I think it was actually 17, and came back and got engaged in some regular prayer and meditation, it made a huge difference in my life. It made a profound alteration in my reaction to life. And sometimes I would do that in writing, and sometimes I would just do a mental note. And I will tell you that about 6 years ago now, when I would take on somebody that I would sponsor new, I would often ask that individual to, whether they were brand new or whether they'd been around a while, I would still ask them to go through an on awakening exercise for me. I would ask them to write down 2 or 3 things they were grateful for, to write down any fears or concerns they might have for the day. I would ask them to write down 2 or 3 things they had planned for the day, right? Because it said we consider our plans for the day. And I would ask them to send that to me in an email or a text, whatever was easiest for them. And there was a young guy that I was having that conversation with, and he went, man, that's great. He said, so you do that? And I went, well, I do now. You know, I wasn't doing it then, but I had done it, but I had stopped doing it, but I thought it would be a good plan for him. And I said, but I do now. And I picked back up, and for 6 years, I would say 90% of the time I was disciplined. I was doing that writing. I was also doing a reading and jotting down some takeaways from that reading, and began to share that with some other people. There's 2 or 3 on this meeting that were getting some of those, and then back just about 9 months ago, I don't remember how long ago now, what happened was I had begun to turn that into unconsciously an academic exercise. It kind of grew legs, and a lot, I was sending it out to a lot of different people. And rather than putting down my experience in the morning, I began to write something to these other people. And that became an ego-driven exercise rather than a heart-driven exercise. It became academic rather than spiritual. So I quit. I said, I'm going to pull back from that. But the problem, as I've already confessed to, is fast forward 3 or 4 or 5 months, and I drifted into doing less and less, and finally into nothing, almost, especially in the mornings. So I have to guard against that lack of discipline. But when I ask God in the morning, see what we're doing, and it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? That I'm asking God to direct my thinking. So rather than me being egocentric, I want to be God-centric in my thinking. I'm asking God to divorce my thinking from selfish, self-seeking, dishonest motives. What if I was looking at the world free of those obstructions? What if I wasn't, they didn't blur my vision into how I saw things? What if I wasn't afraid? What if I wasn't selfish? What if I wasn't self-pitying? What if I looked at things without the encumbrance of those manifestations of self that might inform how I go about my day? And it does. And it says we ask God for inspiration and the intuitive thought. I will tell you, and one of the things that has been my experience, and again, I know some people that I love and respect a lot don't necessarily share this point of view, but all I can do is share with you what my experience is for me. And this is the part of the book that says that I can that I come to rely on this intuitive thought, this inspiration. Now, clearly, I can only rely on it if I'm asking for God's direction. But then I'm going to get the intuitive thought. You know, back in the big book when Jim pours the whiskey in his milk, and there's a line in there that I love because Jim had been sober just a little while, right? And he was going through things, and he, when he's about to put that whiskey in his milk, he said, "I vaguely sensed this was none too smart." And I have always thought that that vague sense was the intuitive thought, that he had a moment of intuition that this probably isn't going to end well, but it was overwhelmed by the obsession to drink in that moment. I believe that I get intuitive thoughts on a regular basis. And what begins to happen to me sometimes, you know, when we show up at Alcoholics Anonymous, and we often joke about the fact that we will tell a newcomer to just do the opposite of whatever you're thinking, right? If you just do the opposite of your plan, things will probably work out better. Kind of the Seinfeld episode with George Costanza, right? Just do the opposite. And that's probably right a little bit, and it's kind of cute. But you know, a few years down the road, wouldn't it be sad if my first thought was always the wrong thought? Wouldn't it be too bad if I had not grown enough to sometimes, you know, I don't want to spend all my time at 32 years sober telling you how sick I am. I have alcoholism, and I have it tonight. And sometimes I suffer from it, and sometimes I don't. I haven't been drunk from it in over 32 years, but I still got it. But sometimes I'll get the intuitive thought and I'll begin to shout it down. I will let self overwhelm that intuitive thought. And I'll give you the example. I've shared it with, with this group before, but it is the one that changed my perspective on these intuitive thoughts. And that is when I was actually coming to Toronto to the Ontario Regional Conference about 15 years ago. I've been there twice, and this was my first time there. And man, I was excited to be coming. And I get to the Nashville airport to fly to Detroit, where we're going to change planes and fly then into Toronto. And as I'm in the gate area in Nashville, there was a woman holding her infant child, and she was just crying inconsolably and weeping and talking to the gate agent. And I didn't know what it was about, but I certainly noticed it. And then we began to load on the plane. It was a small little regional jet, whatever they have, 50 or 60 seats on there. And pretty soon the flight attendant came on and said, you know, there's a woman out here whose brother has been critically injured in a car accident in Detroit, and she's trying to get to Detroit to his hospital bedside. Would anyone be willing to give up their seat on the plane? And intuitively, my first thought was absolutely, that's the right thing to do. Absolutely. But I started thinking about the fact that the conference had paid for my plane ticket. I started thinking about the fact that if I don't catch this flight, I won't get there in time to do what they invited me to do. And my God, all of AA in Canada might fall if I don't show up to give a 30-minute talk or something, right? But my brain is just spinning with all of these things. And nobody gave their seat up. They closed the door and we took off. And later that night, I'm standing up at a podium speaking to the good people at the Ontario Regional Conference, talking about spiritual principles that I had just failed to practice, knowing that the guy they thought they invited would have gotten off of that airplane. And the decision that I made was I'm going to start listening to the intuitive voice. Now, clearly, the book says that a guy like me, being new at this, and I think I'm still new at it many years later, being new at this, I'm going to make some absurd mistakes. I'm going to make some really bad decisions under the guise of inspiration. But I'm going to make some really bad decisions no matter what. So I've decided to err on the side of listening to the intuitive voice rather than shouting it down, and learning the wisdom to know the difference through the experience of making those decisions. And I will tell you, I think that has served me well. It has given me, I feel better about the mistakes that I make, believing that I am trying to be on the plane of inspiration rather than egocentric. The retiring at night aspect of this 11th step. And, you know, often when we talk about an end of day inventory, it kind of gets thrown into the 10th step conversation because the 10th step into 12 and 12 does talk about an end of day review. But I think that this is where steps 10 and 11 really sort of intersect, right? Because the 12 and 12 says that taken separately, prayer, self-examination, prayer, and meditation all have their uses, but when logically interwoven, they form an unshakable foundation for life. So I want to take this self-examination, a quick look back on my day. Have I been selfish, dishonest? Have I kept a secret? Have I been kind and loving toward all? Is there something I need to share with somebody else? How did I do today? How did I do? Take a quick, don't beat myself up. It says be careful not to drift into morbid reflection. And the only reason not to drift into morbid reflection is because it would impact and minimize my usefulness to others. So this is not to beat myself up with. It's just to go, oh yeah, there was a mistake. There was one. I'm going to try not to do that. God, how about some help? Let's try to do better tomorrow. And then get a good night's sleep. And so this 11th step, when we came in from the 10th step, it says that we have, to some extent, we have become God conscious. It says that on page 85, just before it says step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. So I arrive at, to some extent, having become God conscious, conscious of God, conscious of this higher power in my life. And the 11th step is where I want to build upon that conscious awareness. That 11th step is where, just like if I met one of you and we chatted for a while, and I go, you know what, I'd like to get to know him or her better. Let's spend some time together. Let me learn more about you. Let me share more of myself with you. And I think that that's what the 11th step is encouraging me to do, is to build upon this relationship, this conscious contact, not subconscious, not unconscious, but now be spiritually awakened and aware of the presence of God in my life and build upon that. And to do that requires discipline. We are an undisciplined lot, and I should really rephrase that to say Steve is an undisciplined alcoholic. My commitment to you is feel free to reach out to me during the next few days, weeks, and months and say, Steve, how's that discipline going? Because I'm back in the game the last few days. And here's what I will tell you, my experience is about this relationship with a higher power. God doesn't make me wait. I don't get put in the waiting room where he says, Steve, why don't you go act like a good guy for 6 months and then I'll let you back in the club. God is ready the moment I am. I am connected because nothing blocks me off from God but me. Nothing blocks me off from you but me. It is my ego. It is my pride. It is my self-centeredness. It is those manifestations of self which are the block. God is not making me earn anything. God is ready the moment I am. What I'm telling you tonight is I'm ready again. I'm back in the game. Check with me. Ali, thanks for inviting me. You guys, I hope there aren't going to be any tough questions. Maybe just talk amongst yourselves for the next 40 minutes, okay? Thank you.